Okay, and we're recording. Go for it.
So, okay. So do you want to make the kickoff here, Andrew?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Today is October 5th, 2020, and this is the Network Policy API's weekly sub-project meeting under SIG Network. And Ricardo mentioned he added some agenda items, so I'll run through it.
Yeah. So let me share my screen here, and we are good to go. Okay. So I've added some items in the agenda. First of all, I don't know if everyone is aware that we got our 3 first user stories accepted by SIG Network meeting. Yay, that's nice. So I want to, in this first part of the meeting, to delegate the accepted user stories and make folks owners of the gaps. I can be owner of one of them without any problem. So about our first user story, that's a port range, port set. Is anyone willing to be the owner of this one? Actually, the need is to open the issue in the Kubernetes/enhancements repo, and then keep the process flowing, write the PR. And once the PR is written, anyone can start coding in the main repo. So I'm going to propose myself as the owner. Okay. So the second one is the namespace selector by name. Who wants to be the owner of this one? We can open together and just do the issue today or during the week.
I think I was initially slated to do that, but I'm happy if anyone else wants to own that, they can absolutely own it. So I'm default, but absolutely willing to give that away if anybody else. In fact, I would encourage someone else to own it because I think the broader the ownership is, the better off we'll be. But if not, I'll take it. So 5 seconds.
Yeah.
5, 4, 3, 2. Okay. All right, that one's me then, Ricardo.
Okay. And the next one is the cluster scoped network policy. I would like to suggest this one to be Abhishek to be the owner. I can't see Abhishek here.
I don't see his audio connected.
He had to leave, but I'll reach out to him on Slack and just let him know we're assuming he's doing it. If not, we can change it.
Yeah, I mean, he made it pretty clear that he wanted to own this one, so I don't think.
Yeah.
That's really long.
Yeah, I can provide a quick status update on this. So, hi, this is Govind. Abhishek, myself, Zhang, also from Google, and Young, we sat down last week. We started discussing the cluster number policy scope and proposal, and what are the requirements going to be, and stuff like that. So we're all working on this together. But I think it makes sense to have one owner name there. So this is great. So I just wanted to give you a status update that we've already started working on this.
Yeah, I mean, okay. So, is Abhishek the person to own it, or would it be you, or is it? I don't know.
No, Abhishek's fine. Yeah, I think that having one sort of directly responsible individual would make sense. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and the reason why it's so important is because at the close to the enhancement freeze of every release, you'll have the release team bombard you with notifications to update the kept status, and so whoever makes the issue is going to be on the hook every release for making sure that the release team is aware of the status of whatever feature you're delivering.
Yeah, and this meeting is like a way to do our. Andrew, do you think we should use this meeting as a way to? I'm fine with this. Kind of make sure that all 3 of these are progressing at roughly the same rate. Because I feel like it's they don't mean anything going in by themselves. They're kind of more meaningful if they all go in together, roughly with reasonably correlated timing, I think.
I disagree. I think each one is pretty useful as a standalone. Like I don't think they're too
Standalone?
coupled together. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
I mean, especially the cluster scope network policy we discussed last week is going to kind of be the one that lags behind the most because
Yeah,
it's
not that one, but
complex.
the other two as I was thinking. But yeah, maybe it's better because they're different scoped. Yeah,
we can anyway make some following, like just 2 minutes of to the owners if they are getting some sort of trouble with that. But I think that we don't need to bring this into every meeting.
okay, so keep them orthogonal to the meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's move forward. The next item that I brought here is to define the scope of the sub-project. I've been discussing with Jay and Andrew about the expectations of everyone into what we are going to accomplish here. And I think this one is much more like a discussion that we need to make here before moving forward, because I think that we have like, I as an end user want to accomplish something, but I know that there are some folks here from cloud providers that want to accomplish other things. And we've got a broad, a lot of use cases, like being really different, and I want to make sure that everyone here is on the same page here before we move forward. So I think that everyone can keep like motivated and like we can put a deadline into the user stories and start making things move forward after 6 months. So the first one that I put here as that we need to define as a scope is that are we going beyond traffic policy like process isolation? So if you want to move beyond traffic policy, there is a user story about that. I think it was from Mike, isolating multiple process. We would need to involve Signode or like see how is this going to be inside the node by itself, not only network policy, not only by CNIs. So I want to listen if anyone had something to say about this scope. If we need to keep it inside the traffic policy, network policy, or if we can like eliminate anything that's beyond the traffic policy from the node, like that's beyond networking traffic. Anyone?
Sorry, I'm a little confused by the prompt. Would this beyond network traffic mean?
This is we've got a user story here going about isolating the traffic between process in the same pod.
So are we talking about changing the enforcement boundary of network policy from pods to containers? Is that what this is?
Yeah, there was a user story about that. And I want to define if this is if we want to keep this inside the scope, or if you want to remove this from the scope and keep only things related to traffic and keeping pods as the boundaries of the traffic. So my vote is to keep only keep the scope into pods, and then don't go inside the containers, because this is going to be really hard to separate, and we are going to need to involve also Signode and see how is this going to be dealt with the container runtime. But I want to listen to you.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with you with what you said, Ricardo. I personally think that it's hard enough to adopt network policy today, having it be a pod-based firewall. So adding more scope to it, where now it starts to do intra-pod stuff, is going to be overloading quite a bit of stuff, and I think it's going to get harder. It's going to make everybody's job harder. Ours, customers, users, I should say. That's my take on it, but I'm curious to hear if there are other opinions in the room.
Okay, so I'm gonna yeah. Go ahead, Andrew.
Yeah, I was just gonna say +1. I think we should focus on APIs, and I don't think the APIs would ever get to a place where it would select lower down the stack than pods. So
yeah,
+1.
Great. I'm gonna try to consolidate this also and send to SIG Network mailing list just to make sure that everyone is on the same page, because we got like Dan Winship, and I think that we got also Cody, and they aren't here. Just to make sure that we are not getting anyone frustrated about that, like why we are doing this, okay? So the next scope that I wanted to discuss with you.
Sorry, before we move on to the next one, because I think this might be related. I think this, when I first read this, I almost thought that this smelled like something I've seen otherwise, which is QoS. And I thought that might be an interesting scope for network policy to cover, where a customer or a user might be able to define quality of service and bandwidth requirements for a certain pod, and say that, oh yeah, I have this like very critical resource that requires network connectivity at this rate or whatever, and you can take away resources from other pods if you have to, but keep this one high. That could be potentially good scope for network policy to address.
I think that this is already supported by the CNI. Not sure about that, but I think there is already support for bandwidth.
I know Calico CNI provides it, but it's not in the Kubernetes spec as far as I know. Please correct me if I'm wrong. I'm not sure if I'm updated on that.
Yeah, that's not part of the API. You need to annotate the deployment, as far as I know.
Yeah, we don't have to delve into it right now. I just wanted to make sure that that wasn't something that we were trying to achieve here or discuss as part of the scope of this sentence.
Okay. Okay. I think
it sounds like that is also out of the scope of what is in the current network policy API, but I don't.
Makes sense.
I don't know. I mean,
okay.
I'll put a note in the doc at least so we have it for posterity, and then we can come back to it later.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So the next one that I've put as a scope that we need to discuss here is about how are we going to deal with above layer 4 traffic without turning this a service mesh. So we know that Calico and Cilium, they do support the HTTP network policies using a sidecar with Envoy, I think. And also we have discussed that there is an item in the agenda, I think that Andrew has put to discuss about the Fqdn policies. So my question here is, are we okay moving forward to proposing also that the API supports the some layer 7? Because this is going to be pretty complex. Like, okay, we support layer 7, but only HTTP and HTTPS. And then someone is going to appear with, oh, why don't you support IRC's protocols? Because I don't want my pods to connect to 3 node servers. I don't know how much complex this is going to be. And I want to know about that. I am okay with that, like supporting layer 7 traffic just for HTTP and HTTPS, but because I think that's something like 95% of the needs. Also, I know that the CNIs, both the bigger one they support, but this is not about the CNIs. This is about like if we are going to support this inside the API. So
I'm hesitant to say whether or not something like that should be in or out of scope. I think that's something that we should try to get as much input from the community around like use cases and drive that if it comes up a lot.
Yeah, I agree with what Andrew said. And I almost think that even if we were to consider this, area of expansion, it probably will be a new object type and not network policy, because then we're getting into like specific HTTP policy or service policy or whatever it is. So yeah.
So I just missed the last part of Andrew. The suggestion is that we go to the community to ask this.
I was saying that we shouldn't necessarily say it's out of scope. We should base it off of the feedback we get from the community on the use cases that we're trying to address. And if a need comes up in the future to address, L7 policies, we can discuss possibly like a new resource for that. Or maybe we can just say like, this is something that like the services API should do or something else. I don't know, but I think it's a little too early to say that it should be out of scope at this moment.
Okay.
Agreed.
I would like if someone just takes some notes, because I have some lack of attention, so I can write and listen at the same time.
I'll help you, Ricardo.
Yeah, thank you, Bobby. I have this concentration problem. So the last one is about external workloads. If we are going also to limit the boundaries of network policy to objects from Kubernetes. There was a discussion inside the last SIG network meeting that Mihan browses about external workload. I think that this should, that our work probably should go parallel to Mihan work, because what he's proposing here, I don't know if everyone got some time to read, but that's the summary is that he wants to propose a mechanism to register external workloads as first-class citizens in Kubernetes. So with this cap merged, probably we will have like something. We will have something to work here. I think this one also was a proposal from Mike, and I think would be great, like if we could have like Kubernetes knowing also the external workloads and not only things that are internal to it, and having like objects that can be selected, and those objects representing like a mainframe or an Oracle database, stuff's external from the network policy, from the Kubernetes cluster. So I'm okay with that. I don't know if someone has some caveat about that, like if we should bring this out.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I have a question for this one. So Ricardo, are you talking about the idea where we can probably incorporate the external workloads in our new network policy spec, like in the ingress or egress, we can use the external entity workloads to select endpoints rather than just path selector and namespace selector?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, I see. So but that also depends on the other cap, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
But we got some user stories saying that, like, I wanna to create a network policy from the node to some external workload. Like I want my node to communicate to like my corporate DNS, but I want to put everything inside network policy. So the idea here is that, okay, we can create external workloads. We can create an object that represents like the DNS from the corporation, and create a network policy that selects from the origin, like the node or a group of nodes. And those rules be applied in the host layer and not like in the pod layer.
Okay, I see.
Anyone?
So I think today we do. I mean, by extension, it sounds like this is something we should support, because we support external workloads today with IP block in a way. So +1 from me to explore this more, like if or when that API becomes mature and ready to use.
Yeah, there is a +1 from me also. Anyone have something against this? 3, 2, 1. Okay. So.
Sorry. What should I document here? Like, is somebody looking at this, or just say that we should consider this in the future?
We are going to consider external workloads also.
Yeah, it seems pretty far out though.
Yeah, agreed.
Okay, So
Yeah, that's one of my general comments about scoping is that it's like, it's not really that any of this stuff is bad or good. It's just how much time we spend on it, right? Like if our focus right now is just modifying APIs, then this is mostly not relevant in the short term, I think. Right. But so it's like, I guess my broader question here is how much time do we want to spend on this entire class of things that might be relevant in the future, if any? Right? Like how important to that is, because there's an infinite amount of stuff that could potentially be relevant. So I'm like kind of thinking like just arbitrarily deciding what's in and out is, there's nothing wrong with that, but I'm just thinking like,
yeah,
what should we really, it's more like things are on we're putting things into these binary buckets, but things are really on a continuum here, right? So
my concern here, Jay, is for the next item that so now that we can say that we have like a scope, we can try to define a deadline for user stories, because I am worried about people jumping in and saying like, oh, why don't you support a scope that you can put a network policy limiting the, I don't know, the disk IO, because you are saying about traffic, you know what I mean? Like, I don't want the user to write like TXT files. So that's I just want to limit what we are really trying to do to achieve here in what matters about the API. But I agree with you that in a short term, this is not like too much relevant. But I think that with these scopes defined, we can like say, okay, we are going to deal with all those user stories, regardless they are like hard or easy to deal with that. And we can like provide two sides, two ways, one with the API and one like with a reference implementation that's going to deal with the API. So this is what we expect from the CNIs to do.
Okay.
Make sense? Okay. So the next one, there is a discussion. Like I've been talking with Andrew and with Jay also about a deadline for user stories proposals. This is my feeling about that. That we should put like a deadline for the proposals, not because we don't want to accept everyone's opinions, but because we've been discussing this like from 6 months now. So I am like personally, I am getting tired of discussing if this should get into the API or if this should be like a controller or if this is going to be like a kubectl plugin. And I think that we can get like a clearer view of what we want to do just when we close what we accept as user stories proposals. So I think that we should have like 2 or 3 more meetings maximum, defining all of those user stories that we have like in Cody's sheets and also in our documents, and say, okay, this is what we see as user stories, and now we can start like defining a timeline for the work in progress, writing the documentation, the timeline for the data model, drawing the API objects, and also defining the auxiliary tools like controllers, kubectl like commands, and so on. So is everyone okay that we define a deadline for user story proposals? Is everyone okay? Is everyone aware of the user stories that we got here? Like, we got this nice drawing from Jay and some user stories like secure cross namespace communication through security gateway and name it CIDRs, level of indirection. So I suggest that everyone drops into this document, take a look into every user story, see if we are missing something, and then like we can like close the acceptance of user stories and defining which user stories are into the scope that we have defined earlier today. I need your help, folks.
I mean, I don't see anybody adding anything to that doc anytime soon. Like, it's been a while since that happened. I mean, What if we accelerate your timeline and we just say, well, we all kind of know nobody's added any stories in the last 3 weeks. We don't expect anybody to get really passionate about network policies tomorrow and just join the group and dump 10 stories on us. So like, but if somebody has an idea, I mean, we could just have some, okay, you know, if you want to propose an idea, at the end of every meeting, there's 10 minutes, people can propose a new idea or whatever, and we can talk about it as a team, right? But I mean, as far as I'm concerned, we could close that document now. We don't have anybody proposing anything, right?
I am almost okay with that. I only have I have the same kind of problem in my company when we don't announce to everyone and then someone says, oh, but you didn't solve that you are going to close that.
I think we've announced this like 3 times though.
Okay.
Right? Haven't we? Like, haven't we announced it like 4 times? Like,
yeah, probably.
You know,
yeah.
like this, it would just be another announcement that nobody cares about.
Yeah, we can say like, folks, this is your really last chance. If you have some user story, you should drop into our meeting and propose the evolution of this one.
Yeah, I mean, we could say, yeah, okay. So my proposal is we say if somebody wants to talk about something random, including a user story that we're not actively working on, at the end of every meeting, anybody has the opportunity to talk about any crazy idea that they want, and we have our priorities, and the chances are they, you know, there's a decreasing probability that those stories will align with our priorities over time as we get busier trying to get real work done, right? That's my proposal, but I don't know. I don't feel too strongly.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with Jay, but I do also think that it'd be great to have a list of user stories that we've vetted out and discussed, and we feel are good potential candidates to bring back to SIG Network. And you know, have the larger group kind of review them. So yeah, I do agree. Like, we should have ongoing discussions around news stories, but we should have like a a refined list of user stories we've discussed and agreed on as a group as valid.
So once closed, refine the list of user stories and show them to signature.
Yeah, and if we need someone to just go through the list, I can take an action item to try to do that.
Okay, great. So there is a sheet about a sheet from Cody. I think that he organized almost everything there, but I think that it would be good, Andrew, like summarizing all of those user stories so we can have a direction. You can do that?
Yeah, sure.
Great. So the last item that I've put in the agenda is to define a timeline for the work in progress. So once this is closed, once the user stories is closed, I think that we should start like the funny part of, okay, making the documentation isn't funny at all, but starting to define the data model and defining the auxiliary tools. So how are we going to build that and propose that to the broader group? So I really like the docs from the documentation from Service API, because I think that Bowie was really descriptive about the personas and the objects and what they are trying to do that. And my expectation is that we can get like a similar document, because this is their script of what they are going to do, what they need to do, how they are going to implement those things, and also how the Ingress implementations, that I don't know if it's going to change the name, but the Ingress controllers, what they need to know about the newer API. So I don't know if this is the right path to follow.
I think that Dan kind of proposed that a while ago. I mean, Dan's proposal was very close to this, right? The idea that we kind of define things contextually at a high level, and then network policy is some piece of that puzzle, and then you there's like a Russian dolls thing, right? Where you kind of drill down into exactly what, for the user stories that we support, it seems like that kind of would be, to me at least, the Service APIs doc, which I agree is really good. Our version of that would be, I think, really similar to what Dan proposed a while ago. Because I think the difference is that for service APIs, the really, really key thing that was important to understand was the difference between like the cloud provider and the administrator and the developer, like those personas, like that was the hard piece of the puzzle to like, you know, untwine. And then I feel like for us, the hard piece of the puzzle to untwine is what we do and what network policy API does versus what the other external APIs do. Like service mesh and all that other stuff that we're saying we don't do here. You know what I mean? Like, it's like we have to differentiate that. And I feel like Dan's suggestion kind of captured that, because he basically said we should write a doc that has a, you know, that's independent of the API so that we can actually figure out what the API, it's very hard to define, right? Like this stuff out of context. I think.
But do you agree that the next step for us after closing the user stories is to write down those things? So we can have like a direction?
Seems like it could happen in parallel, right? I mean, we all know what, you know, yeah, I mean, sure. I mean, I think something tying together the user stories we propose is important, because I think any one of those user stories just as a random kept to me intuitively isn't like, it's more for us, the overall goal is to have a holistic, easy to use API, and so getting one kept merged doesn't get us there, right? Having context to how the API is used is just as important as getting a kept in, you know?
After all, the cap is going to be, this one is, how is the name of the cap that you propose? You propose a new feature, but you don't propose how the API is going to be, Andrew. That's not the implementable. There is another name, right? Provisional, yeah. That defines that we are going to do something, and that the group and that the SIG is okay with that we do something, but no one knows that we are what are we going to do. So yeah, Jay, I think that we should start writing down this doc. I can try to copy from the service API one, and at least the schema to say, okay, what we need to fill in the document, so we can have like a guideline of what we should do next, because honestly I don't know what we should do next. It's a hard to me to view this far. I think that you are better in this. So about this timeline, the proposal is that we start writing in parallel, Jay.
I mean, I don't see why not, unless anybody thinks we should gate that on this user stories stuff. But I mean, I feel like the user stories stuff doesn't have to be gated on that, because we kind of.
I'm just writing down. If someone doesn't agree with that, please raise your hand or your voice.
I think this document should be, Ricardo, I think it should be something like how to secure a Kubernetes network, right? How to secure, it should be something like how to secure a application workloads in Kubernetes or something like that, right? Is that the doc we're talking about?
I'm talking much more about the document. I need to find service API. There is a document from.
Well, I mean our doc, not the like.
Yeah. I'm just thinking about copying from the folks from service API, because they were really good about They were really good about like writing the user guide and what they want to do, the API concepts, and inside the API concepts they write about roles and personas. So I think that once we have like the user stories closed, we can start really defining what are the personas and roles.
Why don't we actually convert our existing GitHub repository to this?
We can do that.
We've already got summaries of all the stories. I mean, some summaries of all the stories. Maybe they're not perfect in the GitHub repo. So maybe it's just a matter of reformatting it to be like this. I'm fine with that.
I'm okay with that. So
that would be a way to like not create more documents that we're not going to use if we're going to wind up creating that. We need to, if we do that, we need to actually finally do this thing where we migrate it to a Kubernetes SIGs.
mm-hmm. Yeah. This is an issue that's open, and I didn't deal with that either yet. Asking for the org to migrate this repo to our repo inside Kubernetes 6, and also to create maybe a Slack channel so we don't need to communicate inside direct messages to not pollute the SIG network channel.
Mm-hmm.
So
maybe we should add that as an AI for you.
Yeah.
So one thing we did in service APIs was create issues for each user story. I'd probably say that kind of had a mixed amount of success, but I don't know if you want to consider that.
Yeah, we're in a weird place with user stories because we have like, I don't know, are we missing any from the main doc at this point, or did we port the ones we cared about over? I feel like we ported the ones over mostly.
James, before putting them into issues, I remember that everything was in a document from Bowie, I think, right? And then you decided to move to GitHub.
Yeah, I think there was a few documents. There was one where Bowie and some others did a survey of, like a feedback survey of Ingress v1. There was also, I think that was the main one that tried to capture user feedback on the problems with the existing API. Then after that, Bowie and Rob came out with like an initial concept doc, and so this is a design which we think hits these things. So that was where it was at that point when the repo was started and the working group was sort of kicked off and made. It kind of brought in the main community. So they started with a small number of people getting some feedback and having an initial design proposal.
Yeah, we did the opposite. We started with like 1 million people giving us all sorts of crazy feedback, and then we like pruned the list down because like half the stuff wasn't useful.
Yeah, but I think
that Ricardo, I'm kind of like in two minds about this. Like, I get it that they did a good job with service APIs, but to me, we're a different group, and I mean, it's great that we're borrowing from them, but I don't think that that's, for me. I'm like, okay, like, what's the problem we're trying to solve here? Like, are we just trying to copy them, or are we trying to?
No. I'm not going to copy. I'm going to copy the schema of the document so we can like write, because usually I forgot things. Like, I think that we need to have like a front page that what's the problem that we are trying to solve, and written like in a header one size, So we don't generate expectation, but we don't generate frustration either, Jay.
No, I mean, I think it's a great way to tie everything together. I think borrowing from them is a great idea, because it ties everything together really nicely.
Yeah. So I think that's over here. We have my items, they are over. We have some items that need to be assigned to people. I'm gonna open in Jay's repo before it turns into an official repo. Issue is asking for folks to follow the caps, to create the caps, and also to Andrew to go through the doc, and to me to ask the repo. So we just don't forget what we have assigned it now. And I think that I can pass to Andrew so we can discuss the Fqdn policies, right?
Yeah, before we go there, would it be good to try to get a soft estimate on when we think, like, what releases we want to target the keps for the three user stories that we agreed on. Maybe it'd be good to agree on like what release do we want to merge them as provisional, which means it just has the summary and the problem statement, I guess, in there. And then what release do we want to merge the keps as implementable?
I think that the two firsts, they are easier to get them in like V121, having them as a provisional, and V122 to have them as alpha maybe, and follow the guideline from Jordan. I can't remember the versions that we need to step before turning them into beta, and I don't know either, because network policy is V1, right? So this is not going to enter as an alpha or a beta, but directly as a stable.
No, so new fields, even in V1 APIs, new fields need to be alpha-gated so that N-1 API servers can round trip the new fields and it doesn't break downgrades. So unfortunately, like even new fields on the network policy APIs need to go through alpha beta GA.
Okay.
Yeah, you end up like adding it, but then it's only available for, like Andrew said, when you downgrade. So if you were to go to a newer version when it is finally available and then go back, it would be available. But by default, for that initial release, it's there, but you can only use it from upgrade, downgrade scenarios.
But this
yeah, and luckily, like once you get it into alpha, though, like that's the chunk of the work because that's where the validation happens and all that stuff. And then after that, it's just like turning the feature gate to beta and then to GA. So
okay, yeah. I'm just probably going to ask your help when I'm going to start writing this. What's the right process? But I am okay like having this in V121. I don't know if V121 is really aggressive for having at least the port range and namespace selector by name as alpha.
Right. So I'm not sure what the rule for provisional keps is, but I think you're allowed to merge provisional keps whenever. So yeah, like maybe for the first two, or actually maybe for all of them, it would be reasonable to do provisional, like some time in the 1.20 release cycle. Merge them as provisional with just like the summary and the problem statement. And then we can target 1.21 as implementable for the first two. And then maybe cluster scope network policy, we'd say 1.22 as implementable.
Okay, so merge hours provisioning view 120, merge hours in mesh. The first two is implementable in V121, right? This turns them. As soon as they are implementable, they can also become an alpha API, right? Like in V121.
Yes, but in the KEP, you'd have to specify like the graduation criterias and you'd have to specify like in the KEP what release you're targeting for alpha. But yeah, you can't start the alpha work until you flip the status to implementable.
Okay. And for the last one, do we have like a target for the implementable? Do you think, Gobin, as Abhishek is not here, do you have like a target, like also in V121 or?
I don't think we discussed that actually as a group, so it would be unfair for me to just, put undue pressure on the rest of the team. But I think if 1.21 is the target for the other ones, I would say at least a release plus one, that would be reasonable because the cluster network policy is pretty big.
I'm putting just that we don't have like.
Yeah, I think that's probably the safest thing to say.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Anything else, Andrew, here in the caps and the target for the release?
Are there any objections for 1.21 for the first one, for the first two?
I have no, I think it would be great to have this in V121. So
Yeah, I mean, I don't have an objection. I think whatever, as far as timelines, the sooner the better. That's great. I'm curious though, like, what is the work involved? Like, this is going to be tricky, right? Because we need to get the CNI providers to really agree to this. And I'm wondering, like, is that really something that's gated on us, or is that really I mean, if you merge a V1 alpha and knows, you know what I mean? Is there some kind of weird gating thing that we're not thinking about? Like, if we were changing an API that was in tree, right? Okay, that would make sense because it was a Kubernetes thing. Everybody in Kubernetes agreed on it. But I remember a mailing list thread. I went and I reread all the network policy mailing list threads from like the last 2 years. And I remember I saw one where Dan Winship had posted, okay, who's using the new pod name, the new namespace, select the namespace pod or switch and switch, and what's the feedback like? And then, you know, Casey was one of the people that responded. He's like, well, we've had it in Calico for a while, and, you know, it seems to be, people seem to be happy with it or whatever. And so it was kind of that was kind of the time, the way the promotion happened was kind of informally kind of nudging the CNI folks. So like, is some of this, do we, like, how do we do that?
I think about this. I think about the CNIs, Jay. I can like, I can announce for the Calico folks in Slack. At least I stay a lot of time there and use it to talk with Sean Crampton. But I think that once this cap is measured as at least as provisional, it would be great, like that we announce this in mailing list or even in the Kubernetes dev mailing list. I don't know what's the better place to announce that. So any CNI implementing, any folks from the CNI companies, they are aware of the work that we are doing, and ask them to reach us to know about the timeline and like what's the guidance.
That's fair. That's fair. That works.
Because if we announce that in the Kubernetes dev mailing list, the users and the developers, they are going to ask for the CNI. When is this going to be ready in the CNI? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's
fine. I just wanted to make sure that was on our radar, that we're not in completely control of what the logical timelines are.
Hold on, but maybe there was a miscommunication here, because Jay, you implied that there's a new API group and that these aren't in tree, but the first three caps are proposals to the current V1 like in tree network policy.
Yeah,
that's right.
So, you know what I mean? Like, they're in tree, but like all like we're not implementing. You know what I mean? All the actual usefulness of them is that the CNI providers actually implement them properly, right? And I feel like it would be kind of weird for us to like merge, like have a plan to merge things to the Kubernetes API that wasn't aligned with at least having one CNI having a canonical implementation of it. You know what I mean? It would just seems like it would be weird, right? I'm not saying it's illegal or wrong or anything. I'm just saying, since, you know, the implementations are important.
I understand your concern about that, Jay. I just think that, like, for me, is the same as the service type load balancer. What happens if like everyone implements the service type load balancer, but on a specific cloud provider? You know what I mean? It's going to be pressure under that cloud provider to implement also the service type load balancer because the others they have, or this is a part of the API. So
yeah, I'm not too worried about it. I just wanted to bring it up, right? That like, this is not the same as to me,
I agree with your concern.
We should be coordinating with the CNI folks on this, I think, to some extent, right? And that's not going to be hard.
Yeah, I mean, the easiest way to do that is just to CC like major players on all of the keps. You know, someone from Cilium, someone from Calico, and whatnot. I mean, we had a similar thing with. I think I remember what mailing is that you're referring to, and one of them was on the egress policies, and Red Hat specifically had not implemented egress in the way that we had it currently. It had been like 1 or 2 releases or something, or it was like in beta, but we were trying to push it to GA. And the decision was like, we can't gate everything on the third-party kind of plugins. And hilariously enough, we actually, the way that Kubernetes normally enforces this is through conformance tests, which up until like a few weeks ago when I pushed out the PR, we still don't even have conformance tests for network policy. So
okay, all right, cool. I mean, so we just have to keep that in mind, I guess. But like you said, Andrew, it doesn't really matter because it's all it is in tree. So I mean, technically we can update the APIs if they let us. So
but we can hack them later and show how to do.
I mean, it won't be that bad, right? I mean, they're already implementing these anyways, right?
We can write a PR for them also. That's funny.
Calico already implements port ranges already anyways, and so
exactly,
for example, right?
So we have last 5 minutes. Do you want to discuss the Fqdn policies right now, or do you want us to bring this to the next meeting, Gobi?
Look, how about we warm it up today, and then we can pick it up the next time, next weekly. That's okay.
That's okay. That's okay for me. That's okay.
Okay. Andrew, first of all, thank you for putting this down. I think we were discussing this a little bit last week, and just for anyone who wasn't there for that discussion, I just wanted to give you a quick introduction to what Fqdn policies are. I'm pretty sure like everybody's aware of Calico and Cilium and other providers that have Fqdn-based policies, but the exact ask from users is they would like to control egress based on URL addresses and not IP CIDR blocks all the time. It's a matter of convenience more than anything else. I mean, they could do the lookup and install the IP addresses in there, but hey, that can change, and it's cumbersome, and it's not really scalable from a security perspective when you do this at large scale. So as a matter of convenience, many customers have asked for egress controls with Fqdn-based targets. You could think of it just as another sort of type of specification for egress. So like egress to IP CIDR, egress to URL or Fqdn or something of that sort. So it doesn't necessarily require a new CRD as far as I can tell. I haven't really, sort of broken it down to its pieces yet, but that would be my hunch. I'll stop there. Any questions or concerns here? I know one thing that came up last time was, is this L7-ish? It feels like it's L7-ish. To that, I mean, it almost feels like it's more of like the analogy I used last time was, this is more like a Kubernetes label being translated to IP addresses rather than an L7 construct. So that would be my sort of way of looking at it. But, I kind of want to just make sure that everybody understands the ask here first. And since we had reserved the last 10 minutes to discuss wild new ideas for network policy, we're right on time.
We have discussed about that in the last meeting. Like after that, when I checked with you in Slack, I think that this one, it would be like tricky for the CNIs to implement in the layer 3 things, like converting URLs from URLs to IPs, like keeping this reconciliated.
Yeah.
But on the same time, I think that this one with some egress policy for the DNS like you have a core DNS plugin and an egress policy that says that pod can only query for a specific DNS, and that DNS also knows about the network policy, also knows about that network policy pointing to URLs, would be like something, okay, we can at least block the queries for a specific URL, but still the user can try to fetch directly the IP from that. So my concern is about reconciling the URLs to IPs, right?
Yeah, I think there are there's definitely many subtleties here, and I'd also sync that with Tim a bit as well to get some guidance on this. And what is this? Any links or images to the Fqdn policies? Are you asking specifically?
Sorry, I didn't want to interrupt you guys.
Go ahead.
I was asking about like a link to understand better. I kind of missed what you were saying the first time. I didn't want you to repeat it, but if there was like a issue link or something I could reference.
Yeah, I can add some links to this this doc once we finish up, wrap up for today. We have 1 minute, but just I think that to answer Ricardo's question that he asked, yeah, there are probably going to be many subtleties here. I think the important thing here is based on Tim's advice, which was sage advice. Defining what the semantics are that we want to support and whether that's good enough for our users' use cases. Maybe we don't have to solve the whole sort of subtlety of like DNS entries expiring and the type of records and things like that. Maybe what they're looking for is something relatively basic, and as long as it works, 100% of the time, we're in the clear. So it's not a 100% DNS adhering policy. However, the cases that it does work for, it works 100% of the time. I don't know if that clarifies, the way I'm thinking about this.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Does that make sense, Ricardo?
Yeah, it makes for me. It makes
sense. Yeah. And whoever did that, sort of docs there, thank you. I only see anonymous animal name, so so thank you. But yeah, I think those are some good docs to follow. I've sort of poured over, the Cilium spec for DNS-based policies. I think what they're doing is they're just sort of snooping the traffic between kubedns and other pods, and when they make a request to go out to some other URL that requires resolution, they just kind of snoop on that traffic, and then they program eBPF based sort of updates where they can block that traffic based on policy and things like that. So so that's how they're doing this today, I believe. And from what I've heard, it's good enough. I mean, I have anecdotal evidence. I mean, by no means have I run a survey on this, but I have anecdotal evidence that it's good enough. So perhaps a good use of time here could be that, we could just borrow or replicate some of the good parts of Calico and Cilium, and I think OpenShift has a version of this. But yeah, Andrew has a question. I guess we'll wrap up with that. But would it belong in a new resource policy like DNS policy?
Something to think about for next week. We don't have to go.
Yeah. Okay, I'll take a question here. I'll take a note here of the question. Sorry. Apologies for going a minute over. I'll leave it at that. So for folks to sort of think about over the week.
All right.
Yeah.
Thanks for the time.
Yeah, we should bring this back in the next meeting for sure. I think that's.
I think the last 5 minutes.
I guess
the last 5 minutes of this meeting.
Well, I was just going to say the quick stuff that I looked at there. I guess my question is, why would we not want to do that? Because if we fast forward to once we've made some of these new policy improvements and we've solved the single namespace kube system DNS network policy situation, I just anticipate very quickly folks will be like, well, don't allow non-approved package repos, for like their build system. And I don't know, I think it's just going to come very quickly afterwards. So I don't know, it makes sense.
Yeah, makes sense to me.
All right, folks.
Before we close, I know this is last second, but I just if we're going to make this an official repository, does anybody have a strong opinion about, I was thinking a potential place for our existing network policy tests to land. We have this kept for it, but I was thinking a potential place it could live might be in Kubernetes SIGs, the network policy working group. Would anybody have a strong objection to that? I mean, I guess, I assume not, but I'm just thinking like, we might be able to do more in there than we would be able to do in the Kubernetes core repo. This just came up because SIG testing is tomorrow and I'm going to talk to them about it. If there's no major objections, I'm going to potentially consider that as another use of this repo to curate, and maybe of this group to curate additional network policy tests.
I have no strong opinion about that.
Yeah, I don't know, Jay. That's on my pay grade.
Sorry, what'd you say?
I was just joking. I was like, that's out of my pay grade, you know? But I don't mind it in any way.
I mean, I personally prefer if we kept the repo focused on APIs, but you know, that's just one person's opinion. So yeah, no strong objections, but that's my preference.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, folks. So
I look forward to next week's.
Yeah, see you next week. Thank you, everyone. That's all.
Thank you.
Okay, see you, everybody.
I'm gonna save also the Slack channel. Bye bye.
All right.